So what will happen is for each one, when we click on here, that should, no, it's not working, so I might just have an error in my code. Let's take a look. Min length equals, oh sorry, I've said this val, I'm going to say this cell. Refresh that, just click in here, and you see that we get an alert dialog with 5. So let's go ahead now and just get rid of that. And we'll go ahead and refresh and click on this one here, and you can see that we've got 10. So what we're doing is we're successfully selecting the unique minimum length for any field that we sort of click onto, and that's going to be useful because we want to add this span afterwards. Now there's a few things we need to check for. The first one is if the minimum length doesn't equal 0. The second one is if the minimum length is greater than 0, because obviously we can't specify a minimum length of 0. And also we want to check that the length of it is not or is less than the minimum length. So let's go ahead and create our if statement, and we'll sort of put what I've said into practice. Let's bring that down, and inside of our condition we need to say if min length doesn't equal 0, because we obviously want to add the span afterwards if the min length is you know, has some kind of value. And also when the min length is if the min length is greater than 0, because we don't want our users to specify a min length of 0. And we also want to check that this underscore cell dot value, that just takes the contents of the text field, and then we're using the original JavaScript dot length function, and we want to make sure that that is less than the minimum length. And essentially what this is going to do is it's not going to show the span if the text is greater than the specified minimum length. Like I said earlier in the example, we don't want to keep pestering our users with a message if their text is over the minimum length. So if all these are true, we want to go ahead and use this underscore cell dot after. We're using the after function. What this is essentially going to do is add an element straight or directly after this element here. Let's just go ahead and refresh that to get rid of our previous code. So after, what do we want to add? Well, we want to add a span or a couple of span tags. So with this, when we click on this, the span tags will be generated. Let's just go ahead and put some test content in there for now, and press F5, click on that, and you see we get test after each one. And obviously they're just being added sort of after each time, but we can do something to fix this. But for now, what we want to do is we want to sort of display some relevant data. So what I want to do is I want to say append on min length, and then I'm going to say characters required, and just have a space after that span there. So now what's going to happen is back to our browser. When I click on it, it says 5 characters required, and when I click on this, it says 10 characters required. So we've sort of added that functionality in quite easily. What I now want to go ahead and do is avoid this problem of the duplication of the span. So we want to add another event handler after .focus, and this is blur. So inside of here, essentially all we really want to do is, let's just line that up. All we want to do is go ahead and say this underscore cell dot next, which is a directory traversing function, so the next element after this current element, which is obviously our input field. So essentially next is our span that we've created up here, and then we want to just say remove, and that will just remove that element entirely. So now when we click it and we navigate away, i.e. we blur, that will disappear, whether we navigate to sort of, you know, the next field, or whether we tab down to another field or tab back up to a field. So we've got that functionality in there quite nicely. Now all we need to do is go ahead and add the functionality of when a user is typing to remove this message if they have successfully typed more than the specified minimum characters. So just before this, I'm going to go ahead and use a key up function, or the key up event handler, and inside here create a function. Just bring that down. So it looks quite untidy, but essentially all that we're doing is we are sort of binding on different event handlers. We want to go ahead and include an if statement here, and this is going to be, let's add the condition. It's going to be if this underscore cell, remember selecting the current thing, or the current element, dot value dot length, so the length as we specified up here, we use the same thing. It'd probably be better to go ahead and put this in a variable somewhere, but for now, obviously because we're focusing on then we're sort of using the length, we need to sort of regenerate this data. If it's greater than or equal to the minimum length, i.e. has the user typed either exactly 5 characters or exactly 10 characters or more characters, then we can go ahead and use this, this underscore cell.next remove, as we did down here as we blurred away. So if the current length of the value is greater than or equal to the minimum length specified, we remove the span as well. So now, as well as clicking in and removing it as we blur out, when we type something in here, so some text, you can see that it's removed. So for example, Alex, let's just get rid of that. As we were to come in here and say Alex, there we go, so it removes it. And then obviously when we tab down and we click back in, because we've deleted this text, it says 5 characters required. So that's sort of a quick example. There are probably better ways to do this, but it's a quick example of sort of how we can pop together things like this type of selector, use a bit of directory traversing, and also some quick simple logic to work out the lengths and apply this span afterwards as well. So that's just a quick example of a minimum text length checker and how you would do that in jQuery.